Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live presentation titled Microsoft DCOM Hardening Overview. We're going to be talking about the systems that are affected, the timeline, the problem itself, and we'll also talk about the symptoms as well as the solutions. At the end, I'll tell you how to get the webinar recording and any software that you might want to download. So these changes, number one, you can refer to Microsoft patch KB5004442, and it addresses a particular vulnerability, CVE 2021-26414. Okay, I think you've done these lookups already before. You know what that is. The question is now, what's this affecting? So this is affecting Windows 8.1 and later, and Windows Server 2012 R2 and later, which means it does not affect Windows 8 and earlier, and also Windows Server 2012 and earlier. Now, why is this important? Because the systems here, so this is affecting Windows 10, for example, and Windows 11, which are the two most common systems. And it also affects Windows 2016, Windows 2019, Windows 2022. So it affects all these systems. As well, it does not affect Windows XP and Windows 7. So those systems are not affected. Neither is Windows 2003. So none of these are actually affected. What does that mean? Well, if you've got Windows XP or Windows 7, it doesn't matter. This makes no difference to you. If you're connecting between systems that are just Windows XP, this change makes absolutely no difference to you. There are no updates for these systems. You got Windows 7, there is no problem. But if you're trying to connect Windows XP to Windows 10, then yeah, you will be affected. If you're trying to connect Windows 10 to Windows XP, any of these combinations, anytime you have one of these systems, you will be affected. So again, the important thing is you don't have to worry at all, actually, if you got any of these systems here. What's going on? What's the timeline? So in June of 2021, so about 2.5 years ago, Microsoft added the change to Windows. This change, this DCOM hardening change, was on. It was available, but it was turned off by default. So the only way to turn it on is to go into Windows Registry, and you would have to activate it. Last year, so about in June, so last year, in June of 2022, Microsoft switched. So now these changes were again available, but this time they were turned on by default. So they were activated. So if you didn't do anything, these changes were activated. And in 3 weeks, these changes will be on, and you will not be able to disable them at all. Paul, Tracy, I see you guys are asking questions. I will get to those questions right away. In fact, let me get to them now. So Paul, you're asking Windows 7. It's got the patch, yes, but it is not affected. Microsoft didn't make doesn't affect Windows 7. You can actually see that. Also, Windows Server 2008 R2 is not affected. It's only Windows 2012 R2 and later. So again, Windows 2008 R2 are unaffected. Now, what's happening here? Microsoft is actually forcing DCOM communication security. They're forcing communication to be secure. And DCOM will only permit what's known as packet integrity and packet privacy, which are secure communication for DCOM. So what this means is, if you go into DCOM config, so if you go into component services, as you see right here, go into my computer properties, when you go in there, you can see in default properties, you'll be able to see these different options under default authentication level. And what DCOM will be doing is only allowing packet integrity and packet privacy. These have more encryption. So if you're thinking, okay, all I need to do is just move here, unfortunately, that's not the case. And I'll show you why. So what's happening is this, and this is the main problem. Way back when programmers developed their applications, they programmatically forced DCOM to use none. So again, if you're looking here, many people chose none, and I'll show you why. They chose none, but programmatically. That means that the programmer themselves actually puts in none during their connection request in a call called co-create instance EX. So they said none in there. What that means is that the communication, DCOM, is told do not do any encryption at all. In essence, little to no security. What that means is that user credentials are passed in clear text. Again, it's in clear text, which means if you're using something like Wireshark, you can actually see usernames and passwords sent in clear text. So I can see that your name is Bob and your password is 123. It shows up in clear text. I can see it. I can read it. I don't need anything special. And I can enter it myself, which means, of course, I can get to your OPC server. But I think that's the least of your problems because your account is now compromised. I've got your credentials. That's a bad thing. Why did they do this? They did this because it enabled them to provide less technical support. They didn't have to tell their technical support, didn't have to tell users to change anything. They just added anonymous, and suddenly everything was fine. Also for development, there was less development to do. So it was easier for developers to get going because they didn't really have to understand DCOM, and their communication would work a little bit easier. So it's less technical support, it's less development, it's much easier for vendors to get going. And again, they don't really have to understand DCOM security. Now, because people weren't doing audits, and I started doing audits about 16 years ago, doing security audits. And as soon as you put on Wireshark, you start to see that usernames and passwords are being sent in clear text. And all of a sudden you see this, and it wasn't just me, it was the community of people that were doing audits. We all saw this and reported this to Microsoft because it's obviously a problem. And sure enough, Microsoft did take action. So what they did is they're now forcing all communication to be secure. And as a result, some applications, not all applications, but some applications will not connect. I'll show you how to fix this. So some applications will not connect when they're making remote connections. Folks, please go ahead and keep your questions coming. Now, the symptoms. What are the symptoms that you're going to see? Well, when you make an initial connection, and this is only on the initial connection. So if you're doing a browse, connecting to OPC enum, or you are connecting to an OPC server, you're going to see the error here. So you're going to see access denied, or you will see DCOM error 0x80070005. So you'll see one of these errors. Maybe you'll see no errors depending on your application, but you will get an error and you will not be able to connect. And it only happens on connection. So what that means is that if you're able to make that initial connection and you're wondering, am I affected by DCOM hardening? How long do I have to keep my connection going before I know if I'm affected by DCOM hardening? And the answer is you will know immediately. It happens immediately on connection. So that occurs when you're doing a browse for OPC servers using OPC enum, or when you actually make a connection to the OPC server, and you will get this error. Now, there are multiple causes for this particular error. Unfortunately, it's not just DCOM hardening. DCOM hardening is one of the causes, but it could very well be that when you're connecting to a remote computer, it could very well be that your user account doesn't exist, or your permissions in DCOM config aren't set up properly. And as a result, you will not be able to connect. So those ones will also give you this error. Now, if it's a firewall, you'll get a different error. If some application crashes, there's some incompatibility, whatever, you're going to get different errors. But the error for DCOM hardening is this one right here. Now, to diagnose this, you can download OPC Expert. There are many applications you can download. We recommend OPC Expert. You can download it and you can use it to diagnose. What will happen is OPC Expert will be able to make a connection because it's fixed for, it works with this new DCOM hardening, but your other application will not work. And if your application shows you an error, but OPC Expert does not, you have a good reason to suspect that your issue is DCOM hardening. Now, we have a short video here showing you this particular error and how to get around it. If you use your phone right now, for example, you can get to this QR code. You can just point your phone at this presentation. You can get the QR code. If you're looking at a recording of this, you can just enter this, or you can use the QR code. But in any case, the point is that you can use that there's a video there showing you what is exactly happening here. You can see it. You can see it in practice. I'll get back to this slide later on. So how do you solve this? What can you do? So what I'm showing you here are the top 4 solutions. And the number one, in my opinion, the best solution is to get the programmers to fix their program. What do they need to do? Well, they need to change one call here, which is co-create instance EX. This is the one that's remote, co-create instance EX. So if you look at your code, you'll see something that says co-create instance EX. And you need to change your parameters for the communication from none to either default or packet integrity or packet privacy. And in my opinion, as soon as if you're going to make a change anyway, go ahead and make it packet privacy. You might as well make it the most secure. It doesn't have any impact on communication on today's modern systems, so you're okay. But as long as you're there and as long as you're looking, if you find co-create instance, which is for local connections, I would change this one to default as well, and then let Windows do the management for security. So this is the magic call you're looking for: co-create instance or co-create instance EX. Of course, remember, you got to be a programmer because you have the source code and you will need to recompile. Now, being a programmer isn't the only thing you got to do, because some applications use external libraries. So if you're using a lib or a DLL, you'll have to make that change in the library itself. The problem is that library might not be yours. So if you're using Python, for example, or you're using JavaScript or Java, you're most likely using an external library. So you've got to go to the provider of that external library to make that change for you. You won't be able to make it yourself, even though, yeah, you're a programmer. So again, this is the number one solution, is to actually make a change to co-create instance EX. You recompile and everything is fine. Now, Paul, you're asking, and I'll get back to your question later on, you're asking if these changes are necessary on the client or the server. And the short answer is yes, they're required on both. So these changes are required on both the client and the server. But it could very well be that your server is okay and only your client has a problem. It could very well be that your client is okay, but the server is a problem. So both of those must have DCOM not programmatically set to none. So either one will break it. So if you have a client that uses none and a server that's using packet privacy, it will be broken. If you have a server that uses none and a client that uses packet privacy, again, it will be broken. Second solution. This is a solution for programmers. This is something that anybody can do, and you can tunnel. In this case, for example, and this gets back, Paul, to your question a little bit earlier on, you can see in this case, the OPC server is the one that has a problem. The client is okay. So we put the tunnel right here. This is a half tunnel situation. So this guy fixes co-create instance EX. And now the client can make a remote DCOM connection just like this. In this case, the client is okay, but the server is a problem. This is a case where the client is a problem and the server is okay. So you put the tunnel right here on the client side to fix the client. And you notice this is a local connection where co-create instance is actually working fine. You're not using co-create instance EX. So once again, this is one way to do it. In both cases, you're only using one tunnel. In this case, so a half tunnel, if you will. In this case, it's a full tunnel where you're using two tunnels, one on the client, one on the server. Why? Because both of these are actually affected. Now, you can do this with any application. Even if there's a problem with your application, you do this or this or this, and there is the only change you make is right here on the client side, and the change is you're just saying, okay, I'm connecting to this particular OPC server on this particular computer. So for example, in here, instead of saying I'm connecting to this OPC server, you still say this OPC server, but on this computer, on this local computer. So the change is actually minimal. The address space is the same, which means all the points that you're connecting to, the entire address space is still identical. It's really, really easy to use. The video shows you how to do that. Now, the third change you can make, this is the third solution, is you can go into Windows Registry and you can make the change, as I'm sure you've seen. So all you need to do is to disable this change. I know what you're thinking. Well, I'll just do that. Sorry, you can't, because this will only work for another 3 weeks. And really, folks, do not change your clocks. I hope everybody learned a lesson back in 2000 where people tried to change the clock. Remember, we're using real-time systems. The clocks are important here. Do not change your clocks. So again, this solution you can do, but it's only good until the 14th of March, so for another 3 weeks. So please stay away from this one. Now, the fourth option is just do nothing. Now, in this case, don't patch. Just ignore the security vulnerability. Don't apply the patch. Just don't apply it. Or if you did apply, you can remove it. Just remove this patch altogether. And ignore the security warnings and the patches. Just ignore everything. Put your head in the sand. Maybe use an earlier version of Windows. For example, use Windows XP or we use Windows 7. After all, they're not affected by this. Again, I'm saying this with a little bit of sarcasm, but please avoid all of these. Now, I know some of you cannot avoid it. Why? Because you have to have, whatever your circumstance is, you're stuck using Windows XP or using Windows 7. I understand. And so you got to get your security from elsewhere. You just get your security using firewalls with external systems. You wrap it up nicely and secure. So you've got to do that, and that's okay. If you got to use one of these systems and you can't use that patch, just make sure you're doing your security elsewhere. So just be very careful if this is what you're doing. I highly recommend don't just put your head in the sand and pretend it's all going away. So what's happening here? Number one, DCOM is not obsolete. Microsoft is hardening DCOM. They're working on it, and they still support DCOM. If you call Microsoft, you can find people that will help you. You got to pay, but they will help you. They're still supporting DCOM. They really, really are. The change is here, and it is possible to fix or work around this problem. Now, just a few more words for what's going on here. To get help with automated troubleshooting, you can download OPC Rescue that has security audits, and I'll get to your questions right away, folks. Let me just get this out here. So for software, you can download OPC Rescue, or you can download OPC Expert, and both of these will help you with the diagnosis. You can view your data, you can diagnose your connection, you can monitor your connections, and you can diagnose this particular problem. Also, if you're using OPC Expert, you'll be able to trend, to send data to other servers, tunnel, archive. There are lots of things that, lots of other things that you can do, including, by the way, of course, all the OPC specifications, but also MQTT, which is our next webinar. It will be on IoT and MQTT. You can also do REST API with it, of course, with full security. If you want to learn more, some hands-on learning, you can earn your certified OPC professional designation. Come to one of our workshops where you'll learn how to configure DCOM or OPC way. You'll troubleshoot these systems. You'll learn how to properly secure OPC systems, including firewall, including blocking ports. And no, it's not thousands of ports and it's not hundreds of ports. We'll show you exactly how these ports work with the firewalls. You use two computers, two of your own computers that you diagnose and you configure and you troubleshoot. These workshops, we've got remote classes, meaning no travel. These are live. They're not recorded, they're live with the live instructor, and it's interactive. We've got public classes where everybody comes in from a whole bunch of different companies. And we also have private classes, which is made, if you have enough people, just for you. So you've got both of these, and you can look at dates for these at opcti.com. Now, after this webinar is over, we're going to send you a copy of this webinar recording. Just give us a few days. We'll send you a copy of this webinar recording and a link to the diagnosis video, to OPC Expert download. There's an article in Control Engineering that I wrote that will have a link there for you. It's exactly about this and the systems that are affected. And also you'll have an invitation there to our next webinar, which is OPC to MQTT. A lot of you are interested in MQTT, getting a lot of requests. So we'll talk about MQTT, Sparkplug B, real-time, transient data, access to IoT messages. You'll get a publisher, a subscriber, a broker. You'll see what all of these are about, and we'll see what's going on. Okay, so this is the end of the formal part of the presentation. I hope you found this webinar valuable. I will keep going with your questions. Just bear with me a moment. So again, we'll send that email. So now let's get back to your questions. So I'll also say your name here so that you know, again, this is not a recording. Oh, Jonathan, yeah, I showed an example of the registry changes. Our main DCS vendors, okay. Says, our main DCS vendors having those hard-coded too. Oh yeah. Yeah, even the main DCS vendors have these issues. Some of them, not all of them. I've seen this. I won't mention anybody by name, but yes, they are affected too. And you can see it as soon as you've got a system that is affected. So again, all you need, just connect with Windows 10, try to connect to that remote system. And if you're getting that 0x8, 007, 0005, you have a clue that, that there's a problem. By the way, if you're using OPC Expert is not affected by this. So if you're connecting OPC Expert to one of these systems, if it is giving you that error, again, it tells you there's something wrong on the server side. Tracy, the program change you are describing in solution number 1 is the OPC client, the OPC client. Okay, Tracy, you're asking once again, let's go to solution 1, right? The question is this in the OPC client or the server? And it's in both. Both need to handle this properly. Are software changes required on the client side only, or on Paul? No, client and server. How about if you use KEP Server EX? The new KEP Server EX works perfectly, works fine. The older one did have an issue. Simone, in case client and server are on the same PC. Ah, very good, Simone. In case the client and the server are on the same PC, what does it change? Answer is nothing. If your client and server are on the same PC, for example, like this, there is there's no change. This DCOM hardening doesn't do anything to you. So that's why when you use this tunnel, you can see that the tunnel is on the same PC as the software, right? So you don't have to worry about it at all. And that's why the tunneling solution works, and it works with every application. Klaus, can I simply uninstall the patch if we have a problem? Yeah, you can uninstall the patch. Will this update affect OPC UA as well as DCOM? So Will, you're asking that. So this patch affects only DCOM. OPC UA does not use DCOM, therefore OPC UA is not affected by this. Keep in mind, underneath the hood, your OPC UA might be connecting to some DCOM, so yeah, it might be affected, but OPC UA is not affected. This is only affecting DCOM installations. Mauricio, can I suggest a list of principal tunnel solutions? You can look that up on the web. That's easy enough. Jerome, if I have installed the patch and have used Registry to disable the hardening, will this keep working after the 14th of March? No, it will not keep working after the 14th. It will stop. It will stop working. Alex, how much would you recommend to install the client on the same server as the, I guess, OPC server? Thinking about OSI soft technology, Pi interface communicates through DCOM to the OPC server, but if it doesn't require DCOM to communicate to the Pi server, okay, let me make this short. If using Pi, typically the Pi OPC interface is on the same PC. Typically, it's on the same PC as the OPC server. So in that case, there's no problem because, again, you're not using DCOM. It's on the same PC. You do not have a problem. The problem you will have sometimes is if the Pi OPC interface is on a separate PC from the OPC server. Is the higher security level enforced with the new patch on the 14th of March? Absolutely, Yaron. Yes, it is. Jan, is the final patch coming on the 14th of March? So I can buy some time to not patch before I get all the fixes. Now, how Microsoft will actually do it, I don't actually know. And I don't think that they will put in a new patch. I think that on the 14th it'll just stop working. I think they have an if statement there for the date. Jonathan, sorry, I've got a confirmation here. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Yes. So in other words, if you just don't patch after that date, no, you're still out of luck. Jan, you'll have to uninstall the patch. If we've been patching each month and have not applied any registry changes, okay. So Jonathan, you're asking, you've been patching all this time and you haven't been doing any registry changes and everything is still working, then yeah, you're fine. You're fine. As long as your computers have been rebooted by at some point, and I'm pretty sure they have been rebooted in the past year, since June of 2022, then you're perfectly fine. You don't have to worry about it, Jonathan, on these systems. Good question. Bruce, which software do you recommend to use for OPC UA tunnel? Again, many software applications. I can send you a link to some of them. Alessio, would sharing the same Windows admin user on both the client and the server side, okay. So Alessio, excellent question. What you're saying is, you know what, forget all this. I'm just going to have the same username, the same password, which by the way, you have to have anyway. But I'm going to go further. I'm going to give them I'm going to give them super administrative rights. They'll be able to do anything they want. Sorry, that will not help. That doesn't help because the problem was that when the client and the server were on different PCs, the credentials were sent in clear text, and that is what Microsoft is stopping. So yeah, that will not be enough. You'll have to deal with the patch. Stephen, is the 14th of March 0 day or Microsoft patch release date. Hardening takes effect on the, yeah, so that will be the date. It's at that time. Randy, did not the November update make a solution number 5? Not that I understand. But Randy, I can take a look at that. Bruce, how much time drift will UA tunnel allow before shutting it down? The typical is 5 minutes. Actually, Bruce, that time, the time you're talking about doesn't have anything to do with this, but the time, the time is programmatic. You can also set that by some users. The default is about 15 minutes, but you can actually increase it. Okay, let's see here. Jeff. Oh, Jeff, you're asking with the tunneler, do they need to be the same vendor or can they be mixed? Most vendors require the tunnel to be from the same vendor. What a surprise, you know, as a vendor, they want both sides to be them. But some tunnels, the OPC, the one, for example, from OPC Expert will take multiple vendors. It doesn't matter. Pauline. Okay, so Pauline is saying, what if I change the DCOM setting from none to packet integrity, packet privacy? Can that help? Actually, Pauline, it will not help because this is affecting applications where they programmatically set the connection to none. So they programmatically do it, which is actually a bad situation because you as an administrator look and you see packet privacy because that's what you set in Windows. But the application ignores that, overwrites it, and sets very, very specifically none. So that's a problem. Okay, Steve. We have an environment that is all 2012 and newer. And remember, it's 2012 R2 that is affected, not Windows 2012. So we're talking about R2 and newer. We patch our system with December patches. This patch, Microsoft release, appears to be working. So look, if you put on the new patches and if you did not change Windows Registry, so if you have the patches and you didn't change Windows Registry, you're okay. You're actually okay. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, Doug. We have a Windows 10 box that has not been patched yet, but we will be patching in March. It talks to a Windows XP system, okay? Can we use the testing tool today, even though the system doesn't yet have the Microsoft patch, and find out if there will be an issue later on? No, right now, if you don't have the patch, everything will work, even if you have a problem. All the testing tool will show you is that your connection actually works. A good way to do it is take a look now. The connection is working. When you put on the patch, it should stop working. Don't forget to do your backups. Dennis, I've got some people asking me about very specific applications. I can answer those. I can answer those offline. But really, guys, if you're asking about vendor ABC, what do they have? Please go to that vendor and ask them. That's the best source. Dennis, if I install the update on the client side, does it affect the connection to the unpatched server? If the client app supports packet integrity, okay. If applications are forcing, if the applications are forcing, are doing none, then yeah, you will not be able to get a connection. So if one of these systems is updated and you're connecting to another system that's not updated, but the server is forcing none or the client is forcing none, yeah, you will have a problem. What advantages are there in installing OS released November 8th, 2022 or after? I'm going to answer this generically. You really want the latest updates from Microsoft. So yeah, how about security as an answer? Elizabeth, that's what you were asking. Well, you were worried about OPC UA. Okay. Does OPC Expert have crash issues? Does OPC Expert have crash issues? So Jim is asking us when the time drifts by more than 5 minutes. No, there is no crash issue. It's just that if the time drifts more than 5 minutes, if you stop your connection and you connect again, you will not be able to connect, Jim. And you can. The best thing to do is to make sure that your clocks are synchronized. But no, there will not be a crash. Absolutely not. Oh, Antonio, you're using OPC Expert already and it works great. Fantastic. Thank you. Klaus, when does the patch already installed today activate? Midnight on March 14th, even without an internet connection? Yes, it's a clock. TikTok. Jim, you're talking about UA tunnel system to system. I can't remember what that question was about. You're asking something a little bit earlier on, so go ahead and just ask again. Radek, is DCOM used when using co-create instance EX against an IP address of a machine where have both the OPC server and the client installed? Okay, first of all, co-create instance, if it's on the same PC, if you're using co-create instance, you're not using DCOM. Co-create instance EX, that's where you are. That's where you are using DCOM. So again, it's only between computers, not on the same PC. Does it stop? Okay, to stop working based on date? Yes. Martin is asking, why is there OPC UA list not using OPC UA doesn't use DCOM? Martin, OPC UA does not use DCOM, so it's not affected by this. Microsoft is making a change, improving DCOM. So again, you guys may have heard DCOM is obsolete. Well, apparently not. Apparently Microsoft is working on it, and this is proof. Okay, Alex. If on the client application, I see the option to select packet integrity, does it mean that it accepts it? PI interface, for example, again. Okay, this depends on your actual application. Sorry, and I'm wondering if you're thinking of packet integrity. I'm wondering if you're thinking of packet integrity on the in Windows. Once again, even if Windows says I want packet privacy, for example, your application can still override it and use none. So that will be a problem. It all depends on your specific application. Okay, Jonathan. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Jan. Is there any event ID showing up in Windows Event Viewer indicating this problem? Yeah, if you're in Event Viewer, you will see an event in there. You'll see it right away. It'll say packet integrity. So you will see it if you know how to look there. So yes, you will. Alessio, what happens if the client attempts to a connection using integrity level to a server using connection level? Okay. So what? Let me make this question a little bit more generic. What happens if I have a client using something very secure connecting to a server using something less secure? So that is not packet integrity or packet privacy. The question is, why is that server not using security? Is it because it was written programmatically, or is it because it is set in Windows? If Windows set it, then Windows will negotiate immediately to a more secure connection, and you'll be just fine. If you let Windows do that, it will be just fine. Microsoft does do a good job with this, really good actually. However, if the application very explicitly says none or says connect, if it explicitly sets it, that's when you'll have a problem. But if it's all set in Windows, it doesn't matter. Windows will handle it just nice. Bruce, how do you change time drift allowance? You mentioned, again, you're talking about, Bruce, you're talking about OPC way. That's in the configuration of the client and the server. We can get to that offline. Pauline, oh, noted, thanks. Jeff. Jeff, is OPC Expert available on for Windows 2000? No, it's not. It will not work on Windows 2000. However, you can use OPC Expert to connect to systems that have a server or a client on Windows 2000. So that will work just fine. It's just that it can't run on that specific box, Jeff. So, of course, the tunnel won't work on Windows 2000 either. Keep in mind, Windows 2000, of course, is not affected by this change, and you can always use a half tunnel situation. And Jeff, if you're interested, I can show you that. David, will it automatically change the computer-wide settings to packet integrity or all DCOM settings to packet integrity if it's been applied? Interesting. David, good question. So, yes, in effect, what Microsoft is doing is they're changing. It's as if they're going into your computer and changing your security level to packet integrity at the very minimum. So that's effectively what they've done. But again, programs can always override it and choose something else. And if they choose a lower level, then you'll have a problem. Dennis. Okay, that's clear. Antonio. Why Windows XP and Windows 7 aren't affected? Well, I guess that's a question for Microsoft because those patches don't apply to them. That's really a question for Microsoft. I'm just telling you they're not affected, not why. Gianluca, will the patch require a reboot? Yeah, absolutely. The patch requires a reboot anytime that that patch is applied, and after you make a change in if you make that change in Windows Registry, yes, you will need a reboot. Jan, you're asking pretty detailed questions there. Let me get back to you. Let me get back to you separately. Klaus, thanks. Ken, can you review the DCOM settings again? The client computer needs from none. So all you need to do in DCOM, and this will happen automatically anyway. So in DCOM config, you can go to your computers right now and set it to packet integrity. But unless you put on the patch, you might not see that problem. So Ken, if you want, set it to packet integrity or packet privacy. I would just set it to packet privacy. Steven. Wow. Actually, guys, so let me take on one more. I'll take on one more question here. We're running overtime. I'm getting messages here that we're running overtime. Just bear with me here. Wasn't there? Oh, okay. Hang on. Okay, Antonio. Okay, I'll end with Pauline's question. Is probably the nice one to end with. Does the problem happen for all type of OPC communication or only OPC DA? So good point here, Pauline. It's all OPC classic communication. So first of all, it's not OPC way because it doesn't use DCOM, but it is OPC DA because it does use DCOM. Hang on. So that means that affects OPC DA 1, 2, 3. So version 1, version 2, version 3. It also affects HDA because HDA, historical data access, is also using DCOM. It also affects OPC alarms events because it's also using DCOM. So any communication using DCOM is affected by this. Any communication is affected by this. Okay, folks, this is the end of the forum part of our of our webinar and the informal with all of the questions. Thank you once again for those that came. I will reply to all of your questions by email. So I will reply to all of your questions by email. So I'll send you an email separately, and I will reply to all the questions, even the questions I answered already in this webinar. So go ahead, and if you have more questions, go ahead and ask them. I will reply to them. I promise I will reply to them. Folks, I hope you found this webinar useful. Please come back, look at our website and have a look at other webinars. And again, I want to remind you that we have another webinar coming up in a month on MQTT, IoT, Sparkplug B. You'll see a publisher, a subscriber, a broker. You'll see what it takes to put all this stuff together. You'll see the difference between OPC, OPC UA, OPC Classic, and MQTT. It's pretty cool stuff with MQTT. I found it interesting. In any case, once again, folks, please come on back to opcti.com, OPC Expert. Have a look. And I hope to see you in the next webinar. Thanks again, folks. Bye-bye.